Welcome to the Helping Conversation, an exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of facilitating trusting, safe, inclusive, and effective helping conversations with others. Recorded at RockVox Recording and Production Studios, Rochester, New York. Mouth off at RockVox, rockvox.com. Having enjoyed an almost 40-year career facilitating his own authentic brand of the helping conversation, your host, Executive and Recovery Coach, Keith Greer.
Welcome, everyone. And as always, thank you for taking the time to sit in with us on this episode of the Helping Conversation. I'm very excited about our conversation and our guest today. I don't know how you maybe rate the severity of some of the issues that plague us on a societal level. It's probably best that we not. But if we did, the topic today would be near the top. And for me, it would be near the top, not only because of how serious it is, but because it tends to be one of those topics nobody wants to talk about. It's uncomfortable and it's complex, and there aren't easy answers. And it is easy. It is another one of those topics, not unlike talking about substance use disorder. And in fact, substance use disorder is a piece of this topic that is highly stigmatized. And the people who are in the middle of this issue, it is easy for people to look in with a certain level of judgment. And so even just increases the importance of us having this conversation and exploring with our very special guest today how she uses her unique brand of the helping conversation to make a difference with this issue. So I'm just going to start with some statistics, and you'll get an idea of the topic we are talking about. And these stats come primarily from New York State and Monroe County, the Rochester area where we're recording. So New York State was fourth in the country for human trafficking, with sex trafficking making up the lion's share of that activity. 90% of all participants in human trafficking court, I'm assuming that's here in Monroe County, in 2018, reported serious, unaddressed mental health needs. In 2017, nearly 300 youth were referred to the Center for Youth, one of the wonderful programs we have here in my area, as possible sexual exploitation victims. In New York State, the average age of entry into commercial sexual exploitation is 15 years. That's frightening. 87% of commercial sex workers had unstable housing situations, and 83% were affected by substance use disorder. As many as 90% of teens who were sexually trafficked were already victims of sexual abuse, according to the National Institute of Justice. There has been a 176% increase in prostitution arrests from 2016 to 2017 here in Monroe County. A 2016 study by the Center for Court Innovation found that between 8,900 and 10,500 children ages 13 to 17 are commercially exploited each year in this country. Here in Rochester, we have scarce available housing for this population. Although there are places that distribute condoms and conduct HIV testing, there is no supportive housing outside of detox or rehab. The only option for many of the women is a homeless shelter program, which is viewed by many as dangerous or undesirable. There is a more urgent need for permanent housing combined with more intensive services. So this issue of sex trafficking, human trafficking is huge, huge, much bigger than probably many of us think about because, again, it just is a topic that is difficult for folks to talk about and wrap their head around. And we are blessed here in Rochester, in the Rochester area. We have a program called Brightstar Community. And Brightstar Community's mission is to help women survivors of sex trafficking, prostitution, abuse, and addiction find healing, hope, and freedom. We do this by providing safe and supportive housing, the opportunity for economic independence, and a strong community of advocates and partners. We believe that in the end, love is the most powerful force for change in the world. And it is my pleasure, and I ask you to join me in welcoming into the Helping Conversation the President and Executive Director of Brightstar Community, Sue Kirby. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning.
So good to have you here. Thank you for making the time on this snowy morning here in Western New York.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. So let me share a little bit with everybody who Sue is. Sue offers boundless passion to everyone she meets and any project she has served. She has worked for over 30 years in law offices and more recently for a New York State senator. Building on her passion to help others, Sue is now ready to make this her full-time mission. Sue herself, having been sober for over 25 years, understands many of the challenges women encounter and wants to make the selfless difference in helping change one woman's life at a time. Inspired by Becca Stevens at Thistle Farms in Nashville, Tennessee, Sue is working on opening her first house in Rochester, Lisa's House, named after her close childhood friend that passed away in September of 2016, Lisa Rainey Miles. Lisa was a huge part of this mission and an incredible support and cheerleader for Brightstar Community. She continues to shine down on this mission and is very much a part of all that we do. And again, join me in welcoming Sue Kirby. So Sue, man, this is huge, huge. And so let me just start right from the beginning. Thank you. Thank you for being one of those people who is in our community doing really good work and tackling a subject that it's just mind-blowing sometimes when you listen to some of the statistics that I reeled off.
Thank you. And it is mind-blowing. And the thing that really blows my mind is how that number is growing every year.
Right.
And we don't have the most recent statistics because it's very hard to get these numbers because a lot of the arrests are not for prostitution specifically, but also it's hard to find out that what led them there was actually being trafficked.
Right.
Because they're afraid to talk or, right. They're not going to trust the police to tell them. So it's shocking.
It is. And I really want to jump into what you just said in a moment about the piece about being afraid to talk, because that speaks so much, I would imagine, to your role and those within your organization of creating a place of trust and safety for these women. But before we get there, fill us in. It sounds like your journey to this role as president and executive director of this organization has had some twists and turns in it. So just, a little quick synopsis of how you came to be president and executive director of Brightstar Community.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that came into my brain back in 2004 when my husband and I were sitting and having coffee. Both of us being in recovery and very passionate about not just recovering from the addiction that we both suffered from, but also recovering our true, authentic selves, really diving into the core issues of why we ever started using in the first place. And so that was really our passion. And over coffee one day, I said, honey, I really want to create a safe place where individuals can recover their true self. And he said, you need to write that down. I think you just said your mission statement. So I wrote it down and I plastered it on my computer and I went, okay, God, I don't know what this means, but I know you do.
Yeah.
And so over the years, it evolved from a wellness center for people in recovery to a home where women could come when they got out of prison. And I learned about how difficult it was for women, especially, to get past 1 year of sobriety, and that it was essential to get past the 18-month mark. Why that number, I don't know. Right. But research had shown that if you could get past 18 months, you had a good chance of continuing into your sobriety. So I wanted to know why. What was the issue that was holding women back from getting to that milestone? And I learned that there really was not a lot of support for women, especially. Some of it was the stigma of you were a bad mother if you left your children to go get help for yourself. Some of it was they were afraid to trust anyone that they were really going to help them, and afraid to really open up that Pandora's box of everything that had happened to them. And so it turned into, I want to create that safe place for women coming out of prison. And in 2015, I was introduced to a woman in Nashville who had a program that was working with women who were coming out of sex trafficking, prostitution, and addiction. And I thought, well, that's not a big problem in our country. That's happening over in other countries. That's not happening here.
Not in the good old United States.
Exactly. Well, not only the United States, but right in my own hometown that I had been born and raised and lived 5 generations in this city.
Right.
And to see that our state was number 4 in this, and then to learn, just how prominent it was in Monroe County was just mind-blowing. And my eyes were wide open. And once my eyes were opened, I could not see it.
Right.
And I knew this is where we need to go with Brightstar.
Right. So I find that fascinating, and such a wonderful story that it starts over a cup of coffee and over a span of a relatively short amount of time. This vision in your head just grew and grew and became more focused. And here you are, having created this wonderful organization.
And to think, I had no experience in this.
Right.
Like in my bio, it says I worked in the legal field for 30 plus years, or in some sort of law industry. And, but I always knew that was not my passion. That was not who my genuine self wanted to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So that leads wonderfully to my next question that I love to explore with my guests, which is, I do have a belief that those of us in the helping world, it is not a coincidence that we are in the helping world, that we are not only called to it, but most likely from our first breath had certain ways of being that were precursors for being in the helping world. So if we were to go back to when you were a child and look at some of either the ways you carried yourself, things you were involved in, your memories from that time, what might have been some of the first pieces of evidence that you were eventually going to work in the helping professions?
Well, I think just I was raised by a mother who was so loving and kind and really instilled in me that it was important to help others, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yeah.
And I also had a father who saw everyone as a friend, and we'd go to the gas station when they used to pump your gas for you. And he'd always get out of the car and he'd say, "Hello, my friend." And I remember one time he got back in the car and I said, "Dad, is that your friend?" And he said, "Suzanne, everyone is just a friend I haven't met yet."
That's awesome.
And so I really took that on, that when I walk on the streets, I look people in the eye and I say, "Good morning."
Yeah.
Or, people think I'm crazy nowadays, but I see people. I don't just walk past them. I see them.
Right.
And I think that was instilled in me as a child. And I think that it instilled that caring heart where I genuinely care for others and their struggles.
Right.
And want to share my own experience, strength, and hope with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Those sound like those are some pretty powerful lessons, real life lessons modeled by mom and dad. About the importance of our human connection with each other. Yeah. Yeah. That's a wonderful story. So let me jump back to something you said when we first started a few minutes ago of some of the difficulty historically for women who become involved in the legal system as a result of sex trafficking and don't trust the system, don't talk to anybody, don't tell the truth about really what's going on. So first, I'm curious, how do these women even get to Brightstar Community?
So I realized, we partnered with the Rochester Human Trafficking Intervention Court.
Okay.
And I would go to the court and I would see the women coming in and out of this program. And, I was just learning more about the system. And I realized I need to be able to meet these women right where they're at. And so we have a wonderful board member, Moses Robinson, who's our Rochester City police officer. And I called him and I said, I want to go out with you on the streets and meet these women. And he happened to be I'm trying to think of the word, but his patrol area was Lyle Avenue, which is one of the red light districts in Rochester.
Right.
And so he took me out and he introduced me to the women because he had already been building their trust.
Right.
He would get out of his car and walk around and he'd walk up to the women and he'd say, I'm Moses. Do you feel safe today? Do you need anything? And they really started to trust him. So through that trust, he then introduced me and I met someone that ran a program on Lyle Avenue with the Sisters of St. Joseph,
right,
called St. Joseph's North Side. And it's a drop-in center where people on the streets, anyone homeless or under provided for could drop in and have a cup of coffee and feel safe and secure for those moments that they were visiting. And I started going there once a week and making a big pot of soup because I love to feed people.
Right.
And I thought, well, this is an opportunity for me to meet the women and get a chance to see them eye to eye, talk with them, and build that trust with them.
Right.
And that's where I've actually met the first two women who have come into our program is through my street outreach and through going out to the streets, handing out bags that have hand warmers, water bottles, granola bars, hats, mittens, gloves, scarves, and just saying, are you safe? Do you need help?
Right. Right.
There is help out there. You don't have to live like this.
So I want to come back to this, to the some of what guides your work in doing specifically street outreach, because that, as a form of a helping conversation, that's a pretty complex conversation to be out there on the street with folks. But before I do, until you and I had a conversation the other day in preparation for us sitting down today, I hate to say this, but I was not aware that in Monroe County, there was a human trafficking court. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to just assume there are other people out there who might be listening who are not aware that this is even an entity, whether it's in Monroe County or other parts of the country. So could you talk a little bit about what human trafficking court is?
Sure. So if anyone is arrested, whether it's for a drug charge or, any charges, and it's discovered in the intake process that they did actually suffer from having been trafficked, they are offered an opportunity to go through a court here in Monroe County that's run by Judge Ellen Yaknin, who is a wonderful person.
Okay.
And she offers a program where they come into court, they plead guilty, and they are given a program to get the help that they need. And as long as they stay with the program, and whether that's going inpatient for 30 days,
right,
then going into an intensive outpatient program, they get help with finding housing, safe housing. They get help with mental health issues, substance abuse. And while they're in the program, they're continuing to come into court every month to check in. And they have a case manager through pretrial services,
right,
that is assisting the women. They have a group where the women come in and they're able to share with each other. And as long as they are staying with the program, at the end of that, the charges are dropped.
Wow. All right. Right.
So we have partnered with them to be part of the housing piece.
Great.
Because there was so little so little housing.
Right. So it's akin to drug court, right? On the other side of the building, maybe. Right.
Exactly.
Right. That's wonderful. I did not know that this court existed. That's phenomenal. How long?
Not many people do know.
Right. How long has human trafficking court been around? Do you know?
Oh boy, I don't know, but I was introduced to them probably 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I know that originally it was just in the city of Rochester and just recently expanded to the entire Monroe County.
It did.
I believe Ontario County and possibly Wayne County. I'm not sure of all the counties that are included in there.
Right.
But they've expanded it because they saw the need for it to be expanded, where town court judges can send the women to the human trafficking intervention court.
Awesome. Wow, that's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So I want to come back to your street outreach. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about a population of folks here who, given the trauma in their lives and their life experience, needless to say, do not trust easily, do not trust helping people. So you are out on the street and you are determined to create trusting and safe relationships with these women. How do you do that?
I think just looking them in the eye and letting them know I care. Because as it says, we believe that love is the most powerful force for change in the world.
Right.
And just loving these women right where they're at and looking right in their eyes and not looking down on them and not judging them. And I think that they really feel that from me, the genuineness that I do really care, but also continuing to show up. So, the sad part is with COVID, unfortunately, the drop-in center has had to close down due to a decrease in the number of volunteers. Right. Which, if there's any people in the Rochester area that are interested in volunteering, this is a wonderful organization through the Sisters of St. Joseph that is in real need of volunteers just coming in and serving coffee and being present for these people, and letting them know that we care.
Right.
I'd love to get that back open so that we can continue doing that, especially during these cold months.
Yeah.
So just, being able to look them in the eye and they see that I genuinely do care. And I'm offering them an opportunity to leave that life and to tell them that, you can leave this life and I can help you get there.
So I hear a piece here about engendering hope. Right? That part of your interaction with them is to create some hope, maybe even a vision for what recovery could look like.
Yes, and just recently, the two women who are living in our first home are joining me on street outreach.
Wow,
we
that's
were out
awesome.
there Christmas night, New Year's night, handing out the bags, letting them know, hey, the girls are saying, girl, I did this, you can do this too. Yeah. You don't have to live like this anymore. Yeah. And that, I think, means even more. That it's not coming from this woman who doesn't get them or doesn't understand what they're going through. It's coming from women that they know. Yeah. They've been on the streets with who are saying, you can do this too.
Right. So that power of shared experience.
Exactly.
Right? Not to minimize the work you do, but as you're saying, sometimes that shared experience is even a little bit added extra.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. But what I hear you saying, and it and what guides your street outreach is authenticity, genuineness on your part, showing up, consistency, right? Being predictable for a group of women whose lives have been marked by total unpredictability, especially when it comes to relationships in their lives, I would imagine. And the piece, I was just having this conversation with a group of coaches I was training the other day about this power of engendering hope. Engendering hope. I tell this story all the time, Sue, about a supervisor I had many years ago when I was a family therapist who always used to say to me, in a 50 to 60 minute session, your only goal is some interaction with the people you're working with that engenders a sense of hope. Anything else you do is sprinkles. It's extra. It's good. But it's hope. Hope is what allows people to walk away from an interaction with you and say, I'm going to come back. Yeah. Right. And take and continue to be vulnerable and take a chance. So that's huge.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. And that vision, I would imagine for a lot of these women, they do not have a vision of what recovery could be for them.
Right. And to tell them we're offering you a place to live for 2 years rent free.
Yeah.
They're looking at you like, what's the catch?
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, there's that lack of trust.
Yeah.
Right.
What do I have to do for it?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Because that's what they've known for years on the streets.
Right. So Lisa's house
Yes.
is up and running?
It is. Yes. We opened just before Thanksgiving of last year.
Wow.
In spite of COVID. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the house, how that came to be and how it functions on a day-to-day basis.
So we were in search of a property. We didn't know how that was going to happen, whether it was going to be a donated property, or we were trying to work with the Monroe County Vacant and Abandoned Homes Task Force, and that just wasn't ironing out into anything. In the meantime, we just kept raising funds. And eventually we went, you know what? We have enough to buy a house. And I was approached in February of last year by an organization that unfortunately had to fold. And they had been a housing program for women in recovery. And so we have been doing the very long process through the COVID world of purchasing that home. We took possession in September of last year and started doing some minor renovations.
Right.
And it got to the point where the home was a safe place for the women. We had a security system in, we had, it was warm, it was cozy. And in the beginning, it was a house, and it became, little by little, it became a home.
Yeah.
And I love walking in there today and seeing how our first two women have made this their home. They really have worked together to make this their home. And so we opened up the doors to our first two women, and they had been women who I'd met on street outreach, and they had gotten themselves off of the streets during COVID. And the biggest thing that was lacking for them was housing. They were both living in situations with men who were very unhealthy.
Yeah.
And very dangerous for them to be living in those situations. It risked their continuing in their recovery.
Right.
And so we decided that it was more beneficial for them to live in the home as we get our program up and running. And so it's kind of cool in a way, because they've really been a big part of the startup of our program. And they've been able to give their input into a lot of it. So we've had the program all laid out. It's just implementing that program now and getting all these people that we've been working on having partnerships with, and getting those resources coming into the home, whether it's through Zoom or in person.
Right.
Unfortunately, right now, a lot of it has to be via Zoom.
Yeah.
And just making sure, both of them are in their substance abuse programs. They're in mental health, especially focusing on trauma.
Right.
Which is something we really, really have focused our program on, is looking at the trauma, majority of which started in childhood and led them on the path that they went on.
Right. Right. How many women can be at Lisa's house if when it is up and running full steam?
So in our first home, it's 4 women.
4 women.
So each home will have no more than 5 women in the home. So our focus right now is getting this all solid, the program running smoothly, and then focusing on where will the next house be. Right.
Is there some specific thinking or theory or modality behind only 4 to 5 women in a house versus some larger facility?
Well, we're creating a community living
Okay.
situation,
Right.
where it's a peer mentorship and there's no live-in authority figure in the home.
Oh,
So
okay.
putting too many people in the home is
Right.
creating more opportunity for chaos and conflict. And so this is a model that we're following from Nashville.
Okay. Right.
Which was founded by Becca Stevens, an Episcopalian minister.
Right.
25 years ago, decided I'm just going to bring these women into a home and love up on them and it'll all be good.
Right. Right.
And she learned a lot of the lessons that I'm learning too, that's not all they need. They need structure. They need the program. They need, and so she developed it all, and it's become this incredible model that is evidence-based, that has 75% success rate.
Wow.
And it's where they're, after graduation in the 2-year residential program, 5 years later, they're still employed, they're still sober, and that's huge.
Can you repeat that statistic, the success rate?
75%.
Wow, that's fabulous. Yeah. Is there, I'm just curious, is there a name for the model? Like, is it the Thistle Farms model?
Actually, I am a member of the Thistle National Network.
Okay.
So the thistle is a weed that can grow through concrete, and it's very strong, and it blooms this beautiful flower that has very healing powers to it.
Right.
The thistle seed. And so Becca Stevens decided that she wanted that to be her what's the word I'm trying to think? Not just logo, but that represented
kind
the
of
women,
symbol.
that how their strength got them through that concrete wall,
right,
to where they could come and bloom into this beautiful flower.
Okay, that's awesome. Awesome. And evidence-based is music to my ears.
Yes.
Right? That we're out there doing things and we know, right? We're really looking at it and determining, does it work and how does it work and for whom does it work? And so important. Right.
And it's not just us here in Rochester. There's actually 50 sister organizations around the country, in Canada, in New Zealand, in Australia, in South Africa, that are all following this same model.
Okay.
And so we all in the Thistle National Network are sharing best practices, supporting each other through our difficulties and celebrating our successes. And we're actually building, in Nashville, they're building a database where we're all going to be able to share data. And that's going to be very important for us, and able to share, this is what's happening. This is the model we're using, and it's working.
Right, right. Sometimes I think people describe that as, okay, that's great, Sue. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But what I hear is you're all inventing the wheel and modifying the wheel together. Exactly.
Right. What works in our area.
Right, right.
For instance, there are some programs that do not accept people that are on Suboxone, which is a drug that is used to help addicts.
Right,
and
yes.
We went through many meetings of, this is widely used here. And we need to support the women with their drug and alcohol treatment.
Yes.
Counselors and caseworkers there to support them through that, And so we decided that we do accept people who are on Suboxone. We also had to look at the methadone program. And, did we want to, deal with that? And there was so much involved with that we decided that was not something that we could accept. But we would work with them to get to move into Suboxone if that was something they wanted to do.
So I have to ask, not that it's relevant to the Rochester area, but just because this is a topic so near and dear to my heart, right? Mm-hmm. Is the stigma still involved within the substance use disorder treatment and recovery community about the use of any medications? So for the folks within your organization who've made this decision that we will not take women into the homes that are on Suboxone, I'm just curious. If I were to ask them what informs their thinking on that, what would they tell me? Boy,
I really don't know. Okay. They see it as I do know this, they see it as substituting one drug for another. And so we have a psychiatric nurse practitioner that works at the URMC here in Rochester that was very much a supporter of us accepting Suboxone.
Yeah.
Because she said this is helping people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what happens is some people get on Suboxone and they're getting it and selling it on the streets.
Okay. Yep.
So that's part of the issue.
Right.
And so what we're saying is, but we're working with women in a safe environment where they're supported and they're working through a program.
Yeah.
So why would we not?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Never mind the reams of, if you want to talk about evidence base, the reams of research out there now that supports Suboxone as a significant intervention for some folks. And just our need, and I'm thrilled to hear that your organization is doing this, our need to get past the stigma that the only recovery is, no use of any kind of medications at all, because that's just false. And in our world of opioid use disorder, thank you. Thank you for being open to recognizing that this is a really legit intervention for many folks struggling with addiction.
And again, I just want to reiterate that I think it works best when they have the support of living,
question,
and they have the program to work with it. Yeah.
Right.
That it works hand in hand. To hand them Suboxone and put them back out on the street is not helping.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful. So you've raised a couple of issues I want to jump on in terms of again, from the perspective of how we help folks with struggling with these issues. So it's clear from our conversation so far, and we'll get to trauma in a minute, but before we get to trauma, is the connection between human trafficking and substance use disorder. So can you talk a little bit about that? What you're seeing is the role of active addiction in human trafficking, and some of the challenges maybe for the women that you work with in addressing that specific issue.
Yeah, so this is something where a lot of the women will tell me, well, the drug is my pimp.
Yeah.
That's what kept them out there. But what actually happens is they're led down this path of, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to, give you everything you need. And I know that you need the drugs, because many of them are already addicted to painkillers. So one of the women's story is that she had surgery and became addicted to the painkillers.
Yep.
And once the doctor stopped the prescription, when it ran out, she started buying the pills on the streets, and it was very expensive. And it was actually her daughter who said, Mom, you can have heroin and it's just as easy, or it's just as, it's going to give you the same feeling,
right, and much less expensive.
It's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And that's sad that mom and daughter are using together, and, seeing that as maybe a bonding moment. I don't know.
Right.
And it's sad, but that's where the drug world takes people. And so next thing you know, it's snowballing out of control, and you're finding yourself, you've left your family, you've left your kids, and you're out on the street selling your body so that you can get your next fix.
Right. And
there's constantly men coming up and, saying, I'm going to take care of you. I'll give you a place to sleep. And they think that this man really loves me and is going to take care of me. And the next thing you know, he's forcing you to do things that you don't want to do. And, so they get caught up in this world and they just can't seem to get out of it. And, but one of the things that I know the Center for Youth here in Rochester sees more of is the children coming, especially from foster care system, runaways are out on the streets. And according to the statistics I've seen, within 48 hours are picked up by a trafficker.
Right.
And that's hard for me to fathom.
Right.
It really is.
So that's not even about substance use disorder. That's just 14, 15-year-old on the street. And
they're vulnerable. Then they get them hooked on the drugs. And they need the drugs.
Right.
They need the trafficker to provide them the drugs.
Right.
and then they end up doing what they need to do to get those drugs. And another sad thing that I've heard in this area, and I know it happens all over the country, is they'll actually wait outside of NA meetings. They'll wait outside of outpatient treatment facilities.
Wow.
Because they know that these are the vulnerable folks. Vulnerable people.
Yeah.
They'll go into shopping malls and they'll see a group of young girls.
Right.
And they'll say, oh, you ladies are beautiful. And the girls, you know, some of them will say, oh, thank you, and move on. But they look for the one that's going to look down and go, oh, thanks.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Like she doesn't believe it. And they know that girl's vulnerable.
Yeah.
She's going to take the bait. She's going to, you know, I just need to go and tell her, you are beautiful. Don't you know how beautiful you are? And, you know, then they start promising them, and then they're connected on Facebook, and they're, you know, show me pictures, text me pictures of yourself. And
so that whole grooming process.
Sick world. Exactly.
Right. Right. So it sounds to me that, you know, whether we're talking about a woman who's a little older or we're talking about a teenager, that somewhere in this dynamic, substance use disorder is a piece.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And the population that we focus on is 21 and older.
Okay.
And a lot of the women that I see out in street outreach are much older.
Okay.
You know, they're in their 30s and 40s,
right.
and they've been out there a long time.
God. Yeah.
And they feel like there's no hope for them.
Right. Right.
It's too late.
Right.
You know, they weren't brought out there in the time when human trafficking was the thing to talk about.
Right.
It wasn't the focus. And so now they're just seen as whores and prostitutes that asked for this.
Right.
Or they chose this world.
Yeah.
Or they deserve it because they're just drug addicts.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, just the mentality of the population here that, or everywhere, that looks upon these women as throwaways.
Yeah. Look, it strikes me that in some ways you could think of this as these women are struggling with a double stigma, because before we even get to talking about human trafficking, we all know the stigma that is still involved for people who are dealing with substance use disorder. And much of society says many of the same things that you just said, Sue. You're doing it to yourself. You could get out of this if you wanted to. You know, you're weak. You're weak. Right. Yeah. That whole moralistic narrative that still is alive and well, and judgmental narrative. Now you throw
pick yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Lord knows we would love it to be that easy. Right. Yeah. And that simple. So now you have that stigma on top of the stigma around sex trafficking. And I can envision for women, again, we're back to no hope, no vision that this could ever be any different for me.
Yep.
So
exactly.
you mentioned trauma focused and trauma informed. So within this model, how does trauma informed care get intertwined in the model, and what does it look like in terms of the actual work with the women that are a part of the program?
So our program is mainly just providing that safe housing for the women, but then we partner with people who are trained in this field, especially, and looking at mental health, where they are focusing on the trauma, looking at trauma-informed art therapy, trauma-informed yoga, you know, teaching them about a healthy relationship with their body.
Right.
And then really looking at the chemistry in the brain and the ACE study, which is the adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah, beautiful.
And looking at and teaching them about this is what's happened to your brain over the years of all of these things happening. And these are why some of these things are happening to you.
Yeah.
You know, teaching them the why, teaching them, you know, this was not your fault. Because many of them think, you know, I'm such a loser.
Right.
I'm no good.
Right.
I'm not worth it. And just teaching them that, you know, this is not your fault.
Yeah.
Here's what happened. And here's how we can change things for you moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, and So we are working with different organizations. There's the HEAL project at the URMC that has wonderful mental health, trauma-informed care.
Beautiful.
And so that's one of the ones that we're really focusing on working with. Mm-hmm. There's also the WISH program, and I am not going to be able to remember what WISH stands for. It's the Women's Initiative. And I'm so sorry, Diane, that I'm not remembering this, but Dr. Diane Morse runs that through the URMC as well.
I know Diane. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just working with other programs that are focusing on trauma. And then training all of our staff and volunteers in trauma-informed care.
So talk a little bit about that part. I am assuming in a program like this, you do not have a large number of paid staff. These are volunteers who are coming in, who are committed to this issue. What is your expectation for the level of knowledge and skill, let's say, especially around trauma-informed care, that you have for people who might be interested in doing some volunteer time with your organization?
So anyone that's working directly with the women in the home or even outside of the home, even giving them a ride to meetings, we just want to make sure that they're trained to understand the trauma that these women have gone through and to not add to that trauma, to not get triggered, to not react, and just, helping them to understand the population that we're working with and understand, their role and their part in helping these women to heal.
Right.
And I think that that's so important. Anyone who's working directly with the women, we would require that.
So I want to ask if you can give an example to that, because this is such an important part of the helping conversation, is that sometimes, no matter how well-meaning we are as helping people, we can engage with folks and re-traumatize if we're not careful. So can you give an example of if you were in doing some of this training with some of your volunteers, what is some of the guidance that you give folks around how to be very aware of their interaction with the women so as not to re-traumatize?
To really just listen and to be able to hear what the woman is saying. Because I know just from personal experience that the women can get triggered by something I've said.
Yes.
And then I can also get triggered by their reaction to something I've said. And that can be extremely toxic environment for everyone, not just the women, but also for anyone who's working with the women.
Right.
And so it's learning to listen and to understand where this question is coming from or this statement is coming from, and then responding with reflecting. It sounds like what I'm hearing you say
Beautiful.
Is this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So some real basic yet powerful and evidence-based motivational interviewing techniques.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Listen deeply, reflect back. Here's what I'm hearing, and trust how healing doing that is, right?
Yeah.
Without having to ask a whole lot of questions and opening things up that you don't want to open up.
Yeah. And I had no idea coming into this that this is where I was going. I just wanted to open a home and invite the women in, and they'll live happily ever after.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
I'm learning so much in all of this process.
Of course.
And I'm grateful for having a husband with 37 years of sobriety that is trained in addiction counseling and has had years of motivational interviewing and reflective listening.
Beautiful.
And, actually wrote a daily reader for people in recovery.
Awesome.
And so I have him to help me and to process things with, and to say, honey, this is what happened today. How do I work through this in a healthy way? And so he's very helpful with me. But again, myself going through trauma-informed care training.
Right.
And learning all of these things.
Yeah.
And it's helping me in my own recovery path too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had trauma in childhood. My mother died suddenly when I was 11 years old.
Right.
And my whole world was upside down.
Right. I think one of the greatest gifts of this focus over the last 10, 15 years on the ACEs study is it has, and you just gave a great example, it has expanded our understanding of what traumatic events are for children. Like historically, somebody would probably not view your mom died at 10 as trauma.
Right.
But it is, right? It is. And so that increased understanding of the role of these kinds of events in our lives when we are children and how they stay with us. It's one of the greatest gifts of I think the last 10, 15, 20 years of the trauma-informed movement.
Yeah, and that many of my beliefs about myself and others were formed then.
Yeah.
It's not okay to cry.
Right.
It's not okay to talk about this subject.
Right.
Because it's too painful for Dad and he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So I can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's just scratching the surface.
Yeah. Oh my.
Stuff,
yeah. Right.
know?
Right. It's just so powerful, those messages that are, you could argue, are coping mechanisms in the moment, but don't work for you, long term. Right. So if someone was listening and knows of a woman in this situation, I'm assuming there's some very specific criteria that a woman needs to meet to come into your residence. What is that criteria?
So they have to have had issues with sex trafficking or prostitution.
Okay.
And addiction.
Okay.
Yes. And we would make sure that they get into a inpatient program where hopefully they can get 30 days. With insurance, you never know.
Right.
And then from there, we'd get them into a halfway house and get them continued into their recovery.
Okay.
And working with their case manager, this is someone who is serious about their recovery and wants to continue their journey.
Okay.
And have this opportunity. And then we would welcome them into the home. It's looking at here's the background. Here's what your goals are. We have a bed for you. If we don't have a bed for you, we have 50 sister organizations that we can call on.
Beautiful.
Who have a bed available.
Right. But a key piece here is that when it comes to the impact of substance use disorder, it's not like your home is open to somebody their first day in recovery. You're looking for and will help them facilitate and connect with organizations here in town that will get their recovery moving.
Yes.
And then you become an option.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. To help them to really continue that work and have that real chance of this holding.
Right.
Because a lot of people will go through the 30-day treatment if they're lucky, get into a halfway house. And then from the halfway house, they end up, this guy's offering me a place to live for free so I can, and that's actually what happened to one of the women.
Really? And
then ended up in a small apartment with a man who turned out he was using. Yeah. And, that's not a safe environment to be in when you're in early recovery.
Right.
So, giving them that next step of, I'm serious about this. I want this. I don't want to go back out there.
Yeah.
And I want this gift that's being given to me.
Yeah.
2 years rent free.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. So I'm also assuming for folks who are listening that you welcome any and all donations and support that you are a freestanding program, not connect. I think you mentioned this to me when we talked. You very specifically made a decision, and maybe it's just a part of the larger model, that you're not connected and beholding to larger state and federal funding systems. That's true?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it really is, it gives us more freedom.
Yeah.
And it also makes us accountable. We have to look at, if we want this program to continue, we have to work hard to get this money in.
Right.
We have to, we have foundational grants and corporation grants that we look at. But then looking at corporate partnership and individual donations, monthly donors, are huge for us. And just, staying on top of keeping this machine going.
Right. Right.
And now having that connection with the national network and really having, more opportunities once we have our database, really having that data to show that this is working.
Yeah. So I want to come back to a couple of questions that are specific to Sue Kirby. Okay. So one of the things I'm hearing that you do in your work with the folks that you serve is that you come from a very specific strength-based perspective, that you are here to help these women see themselves as whole and competent and capable and moving on with their lives. So I am always curious with my guests about your strengths and positive attributes. So Sue Kirby, could you share with us just a few of the strengths, positive attributes, positive characteristics, talents, skills, you name it, that you bring to your role as president and executive director?
Well, I think that it's my own experience in recovery. Mm-hmm. I'm, 28 years clean and sober.
Congratulations.
And my own experience with healing from trauma.
Yeah.
And, uncovering all those built up lies that were running my life and someone else's belief system that was driving me. And then building up my own belief system that works for me. I think that one of the things that I've really worked hard on is, I don't want to say battling because it's not really battling, but working through that belief of, who are you kidding? You're a high school dropout with a GED.
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? You're going to be able to start a nonprofit, and I did this from the ground up.
Yes, you did.
I met with someone from SCORE, which is a wonderful organization of volunteers. And he discouraged me from starting from scratch.
Seriously, really?
Because it was going to be a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay.
And I said, you know what? I tried partnering with somebody and we did not see eye to eye on what empowering women looked like. And I want to do this from scratch. So I bought the book, Nonprofits for Dummies.
That is awesome.
And I sat with my friend, Lisa Rainey Miles, who our house is named after. And we sat in the Fairport Library every Friday and said, okay, number one, get a board together, and do a business plan. Okay, what does a business plan? Let's go to that shelf in the library and find books on how to write a business plan. And so, that's where this came from. And that was in 2016. So in 4 years, we've been able to do this. And I'm pretty proud of that. And that's pretty amazing that I can say I'm proud of myself.
Yes.
That wasn't who I was 28 years ago.
So I am hearing in terms of strengths, honesty, vulnerability, authenticity, determined, trusting this vision that you had. And I'm also hearing significant, which I think must be such a wonderful model for the women that you work with, that you are a self-starter and you just put your feet down and you got moving.
I never gave up.
Yeah.
Never gave up.
Yeah.
My husband said, honey, I would have given up a long time ago.
Yeah.
I can't believe you did this, and not in a negative way.
No, I hear
He's saying how proud he is of me, that it's amazing that you've done this.
Yeah.
And, but the biggest thing at the core of all of this is my faith.
Yeah.
Because I just said, God, I don't know what this looks like, but I know you do. And when people would say to me, no state or federal funding, how are you going to do that? That's a lot of money. And I said, you know what? God's bigger.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
This is God's mission, not mine. And it's, I just trust that the money's going to be there and that he's going to put the people in my path. And the biggest thing was paying attention to the goosebumps.
Wow.
Because when I found Thistle Farms online, I went to their website, I read their mission statement, and I got goosebumps from the crown of my head all the way down my body. And I said, honey, I need to go to Nashville and meet this woman. A week later, I had signed up for the newsletter. A week later, I got an email that the founder was going to be at Hamilton College right here, an hour away from where we were living.
Wow.
And I went to see her, and I told her about the goosebumps. And she wrote in the book that she signed for me, never stop getting those goosebumps.
Yeah.
And I haven't. I get them all the time. And I always know that that's my higher power saying, yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're on the right path. You're meeting the right person. You're hearing. Are you hearing this? You know, almost like a reminder.
Yeah.
Like, are you hearing what this person's saying right now?
All right.
And
So first of all, paying attention to the goosebumps, that has to be put on a T-shirt. Right? Yeah. That has to be put on a T-shirt. If you decide to do that, let me know. I'm going to be the first one to buy one. That is just awesome. And I have to tell you, Sue, I'm sitting here and I have this picture in my head of you and Lisa leafing through Not-for-Profit for Dummies, and that is just a precious vision.
I was just going to see if I had it here to show it to you, but it's like my Bible.
Yeah, right. That's a wonderful story. Wonderful story. So let me also ask you this, as a person out there engaging in such an important and complex helping conversation. What are some of the challenges to you of keeping your health and in doing not only the conversation, but everything you're involved in as essentially the CEO of this entire organization?
Yeah, I've been wearing all the hats lately, and it's extremely overwhelming and exhausting. And so it's admitting I can't do it all,
right?
And asking for help is huge. Remembering prayer and meditation, and I do women's retreats whenever possible with my dear friend Barb Klein.
Yeah,
and then also just remembering, what I'm doing this for. Is this for me to be seen as, look at her, look what she did? No, this is because I wanted to create a safe place for others to recover their true selves. Right. And, I have done a lot of hard work on recovering my true self. And I continue to do that because I'm a work in progress.
Yes.
And I attend my meetings that I need to attend for my recovery.
Right.
I run meetings, so I'm doing the things I need to do to take care of myself, but also admitting I can't do it all. I need to ask for help.
Yeah.
And there are people who know how to do this.
Right.
And I've learned that all along the way of, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I bet there's someone who does. And the next day, this is where the goosebumps come in. I'll get a call from somebody saying, I heard about what you're doing and I'd really like to help. This is what I do. And it's exactly what the day before I was so overwhelmed by and thinking, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, the universe delivers.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
I'm telling you, I so love this. Pay attention to the goosebumps. That is just awesome. Just awesome.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that.
I'm telling you, put it on a T-shirt
and
and have it be a fundraiser.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just awesome. So so as a person who's out there engaged in a very significant helping conversation, and I would say, for me, what I hear is your helping conversation is not just the conversation you engage in when you're out doing your street work, and creating trust and safety with the women who access your program. Your helping conversation is all those other conversations you're involved in to build this organization, right?
Yes.
So if someone was listening and like you over that cup of coffee with your husband a few years ago has a vision, words of wisdom for that person about getting moving on that vision.
Yeah. Write down the vision. Put it on your computer screen. Pray on it every day, and just say, I don't know what this looks like.
Right.
And send in the people that can help me on this path going forward. But to always remember that vision and my mission statement, and to have core values at the base of it. What are my core values that I'm basing this on? And remembering that initial passion, that initial spark that started this whole thing. Because once, years into this, I forget I forget, why did I start this? So I have to keep reminding myself. At the center of all of this is that initial statement, I want to create a safe place where individuals can recover their true self.
Right.
And all this other stuff is stuff that I've had to do to help me do that.
Yeah.
But also just remembering to ask for help.
Yeah.
That I can ask for help. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay for me to admit I don't know it all.
That's it. That's it. Look, what I love about that is not only is that just wise, but so a lot of what guides some of the work I do is this model called conversational intelligence, which is built on a foundation of the latest and greatest in the neuroscience world of what goes on in our brain when we interact with another human being around the creation of trust, safety, and inclusion. And there's some interesting neurochemical research out there that says when a leader like you says to their organization, I need help, I don't know everything, that actually produces in the brain of all those other folks in your organization this wonderful substance called oxytocin, which is the hormone that helps us connect to people. So when a leader shows vulnerability and says, I don't know, everyone who hears that actually feels more connected to you as a human being, which is counterintuitive to how many people in leadership still think, which is I'm the leader, I always have to look like I always know what's going on. And yet, no, right? Make yourself vulnerable and you'll get that help and you create connection within your organization. Yeah.
Because I have seen organizations with people leading with that mentality.
Right.
And it's not pretty.
No. No, that's being very nice about it, right? It's not pretty. Yeah. 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 Sue Kirby, thank you so much. This was a wonderful, inspiring, insightful conversation. And just thank you for being out there, heading up this organization, doing work that, again, is addressing an issue that I think much of our country does not want to think this is us. And as you said earlier, much of New York State and much of Monroe County does not want to think that this is us. And it is easy to just not look at it or to point a marginalized finger of other at women who are struggling with this as it's their problem, it's less than. So thank you, and thank all of the folks involved with Brightstar Community for doing such important work.
Thank you. And just to everyone out there, just remember, this was someone's daughter.
Yeah.
This was someone's baby.
Right.
At one point. And to see them in that light.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a moment here to just celebrate you for the work that you are doing and for your commitment to making our world a better place. And so thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time to sit in with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So if you're interested in more information on Brightstar Community or having a conversation with Sue, the website is brightstarcommunity.org. And whatever platform you happen to be listening to this podcast on, please just look at the written description for the episode today, and that URL will be in the description. Please do not hesitate to reach out to Sue with any questions, maybe interest in volunteering. Again, maybe knowing someone who could benefit from the Brightstar Community services. Please reach out and say hello to Sue. So again, I thank you all for sitting in with me today. I hope you found this conversation as important as I did. I so enjoy every time we do an episode celebrating the people out there who are helping. And again, with Sue and Brightstar Community involved in a conversation and a social issue that, as we've said repeatedly today, it's just so easy for people to turn their back to. Please don't turn your back on an organization like this or the women that they serve. I hope you can make the time to sit in with us again on the next episode of the Helping Conversation as we continue with each episode to shine a light on the skill and talent of those individuals, like Sue Kirby, that invite another into that compassionate, complex, and intimate space called the helping conversation. Have a great day, everybody.
We thank you for sitting in on our discussion today on just one unique version of the helping conversation. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast, so we sincerely invite you to follow, rate, and most importantly, review our episodes. For more information on Keith Greer and this podcast, log on to keithgreercoaching.com. Please join us for our next episode as we continue the exploration and celebration of the practice, art, and science of the helping conversation.